So today we have Kent Miller. He is a licensed practicing Christian counselor here in Colorado Springs and has been for 14 years now. And every summer comes and speaks to our training ground guys about kind of porn, male sexuality, kind of everything that's wrapped up in that. And so we are excited to have you today. Glad you're here. But also, even before we start this kind of conversation, we really want the guys listening and watching this to understand that we know that this is a sensitive subject, and we want to approach that in all holiness and respect. We know there's probably stories of shame and guilt and kind of everything kind of wrapped up into that, but hopefully this conversation with Kent will allow you guys in the small group to really kind of approach this subject with some vulnerability and some honesty, for the sake of freedom, for the sake of being closer to Christ. And so glad you guys are here, to be invited into this conversation. And also would love, Kent, your remarks on, how does this conversation start? Any advice or guidance you would offer, the guys watching this film about what this type of conversation looks like, how it's initiated, what are some ground rules or.
Well, I think that even if you remember the times that I've been here and talked to the guys, you can just tell it's different than somebody else coming in and talking about something else. Right. So anytime that you mention or hint to, we're going to talk about this thing now that kind of goes together, porn and masturbation, and the effects that it has on the person doing that, and the effects that it has on the culture, it really is a sensitive thing, and guys are not really wanting to talk about that. So most of the time our discussions, and even in this group, guys are not quite as talkative. They don't really want to be the guy raising their hand going, yes, that's me. Right. So you really have to be sensitive about how you're going to do that. So not uncommon to have a book as a topic, a book on holiness and purity, a book on porn. There's probably 20 books or so that are out there right now that are really good. Some of the guys are more willing to do that if an older guy like you and me, Corey, kind of bring up the topic. But in terms of guys, it's still sensitive. So this is a great avenue, really. This is a great medium to be able to have guys talk about it. It really is the work that I have my hands to. Most of my work is with older men and their wives, their spouses, and the effects that it's had on them. I get extremely excited when somebody 20 or 22 or 25 comes into my office and is really wanting to talk about this stuff. Okay. So it's usually a later man's discussion, but we're trying through TG to get it up front earlier, before the guys even get married.
That's good.
Yeah. Most of the time it's motivated by either somebody asking the question, a girlfriend. Most of the guys I work with have gotten caught by a girlfriend, a mom, a dad, and they're motivated that way. They're motivated out of pain. There's another group of guys that are motivated because they don't really want to do this any longer. Maybe they've heard a sermon, maybe they've saw a book or seen something, and there's just something about this that is tough to talk about the first time. And as I've already mentioned, the topic of porn, and then most of the time porn and masturbation kind of go together. So those are two topics that it's not really just a common thing to do. So they're motivated by something. So hopefully part of our discussion today will be that the guys will see something and they'll desire to talk about it, because I do believe that it's really important to bring it out into the light. That most of the time this is done in a secrecy, and so guys are keeping secrets.
Yeah.
So I believe that it's really important for them. And so it's not an easy topic, but an important one.
So you're saying even kind of ground rules of kind of like, if guys are sharing sensitive stuff, it kind of stays within those four walls, or, you know, how does that even work in a small group setting? Like, if you were leading a small group, group of like guys in their 20s, like, what would be the things that you would start out saying?
I would tell stories. I would begin the process. So if guys are in their 20s, I just already know that most of those guys, maybe not all of them, but most of them have had some experience with pornography, and probably a lot of experience with pornography. So the guys that I work with in my private practice, the stories continue to come up that their first exposure to pornography was when they were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and that they can kind of remember that first time they ever encountered that, or it encountered them. And so I just offer my own story in that, and then how that works, and for them to share something about their story and their exposure. So more times than not, it's they found something, it found them in a ditch in a clubhouse in their uncle's room, and their whatever, their neighbor brought it over, and so guys can remember it. And so if they're 20, there's just a high probability that they've been noticing some of this stuff for probably over half their life.
Right.
Yeah.
Why to start with story? Why is story important? You know, why start there?
It's really, story is the great equalizer.
Okay.
It makes everybody on the same playing field.
Right.
Okay. And so then also the idea of story, we can identify with it, we can interpret it based upon our own story. And I also believe that there's a lot of redemption in telling one's story. And so the work of that is, I think, vital for this, especially for this topic.
And so, I mean, and even with what we do with Training Ground, you know, most of the applications we get, you know, one of our questions are like, what are the biggest, you know, the 3 biggest obstacles you have in your walk with Christ? I mean, number one most of the time is kind of lust, porn, you know, so obviously it's on our radar. But, you know, in your own words, like, why do you think it's such a big deal?
It's a big deal, I think, mostly because of we feel bad, and nobody had to kind of tell us to feel bad, but it also hurts people. It hurts our girlfriends, or it hurts our wives. It hurts us in terms of being sensitive. It's kind of a desensitization type sin, where it does affect other parts of our life. We might compromise on some other things. Right. So there's a thing in us already that is very attached to our sexuality, and when it's used in that capacity, whether it's animated or two-dimensional like a picture, or whether it's people, I just feel like most of us don't feel good about that. And we kind of promise to do better, or we pray it off of us enough, and then we find ourselves back doing it again. And more times than not, we're not talking to anybody about it to kind of assist us, because really this is most guys don't walk this thing out by themselves. They really need like a recovery buddy, so to speak. It's a team. That's a team sport on that.
I get it.
Yeah.
Why porn? Like, maybe what questions are we trying to answer with it? You know, why is it a place that we turn?
Well, let me just throw a couple things and see where they might stick. Okay. I don't necessarily hold to just a reality that we're asking deeper questions, and any more than I do with somebody who does too much alcohol or drugs. There's a piece of it that we have to be honest about it. We like it. It feels good. Our bodies respond to it. So by the time we're 13 or 14 years old, our bodies are equipped to have orgasm. And yet, the average age in America for young men getting married is 24 and some change. So young men are actually sexualized. Their bodies are equipped to be sexual for about 11 or 12 years before they get married. Right. And so that's just a tough challenge that there is for guys. I think it's one of the toughest challenges. I think our toughest demographic to work with is that 20, 21, 23-year-old guy who's not married and has had some sexuality. Maybe they've been sexual, right. and they don't feel good about that, and we're telling them, you just can't be doing that. Right. Okay, so porn is, I'm not saying it doesn't, we're not asking any questions, but basically there is a physicality to it. So I can't separate out physical, emotional, and spiritual. They're all in there together. Right. Okay, so there may be times when within us we are really on a hunt for something larger meaning. But there's sometimes when our bodies as males, we just like to do that. Mm-hmm. Emotionally, it might be that we're stressed or bored or angry or lonely. Right. And that does remedy that, albeit not well and not for very long and sure. not very holy.
Right. You know, at a core level, like what's really damaged by that? You know, like the use of pornography, what really is at risk?
Well, my understanding is that the demographic that are going to be doing this study they've given their lives to a faith, to a higher cause. They've given their hearts to Christ. Mm-hmm. And so in that, there can be just some damage with authenticity. Mm-hmm. Because nobody had to tell me when I was 8 years old that what I was looking at was both powerful right. and not to be shared. I didn't run back to my dad and show him this picture, right? I hid it and then went back to it. Right. Okay, so that really is most of our story. So there's something about this that's counterfeit, that tarnishes women. The trend is to, if you do this thing enough times, that there is the tendency is to objectify women mm-hmm. rather than hang on to them as real people. So that can be very damaged. Right. I think our internal witness mm-hmm. to Christ can be damaged. So if somebody is looking at porn on Saturday night and masturbating, mm-hmm. and then Sunday morning they're offering a Bible study or offering something like that, mm-hmm. it's just tough. So there's a lot of things damaged, mm-hmm. and I touched on two of them. So how we feel about women, and those studies are prevalent now, that the use of pornography, the tendency, the trend is that we will objectify women. Okay. And since these guys, most of them are not married as they're watching this, the tendency is for them to believe mm-hmm. that somehow marriage will take care of all of this stuff. Right. And it just doesn't.
And so
it creates new problems.
Hundreds of couples come in your office every month. And
well, that's a little exaggeration. That was thanks, but not 100 a month. Yeah, but lots. Yeah. Okay. Most of the people that I work with are coming in for that reason.
Okay. Yeah. And you see that is actually a result of that marriage didn't take care of that.
We know no one actually that it really took care of.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.